You know that saying, ignorance is bliss? It is a total lie. Ignorance is dangerous. Ignorance gets you hurt. Knowledge is power, especially when the people plotting your financial demise think you cannot hear a single word they are saying. My name is Evelyn, and for the last 3 months I have been living a double life. To the world, and specifically to my leech of a nephew, Jason, I am the poor aging aunt whose hearing has completely deteriorated after a severe infection. To me, I am a spy in my own home, gathering evidence, recording conversations, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It all came to a head last Sunday. We were sitting at the dining room table, the same mahogany table my father bought 40 years ago, the one where we used to have chaotic happy Christmas dinners. Now it was just me, staring blankly at a plate of lukewarm roast beef, and Jason, sitting directly across from me with his new girlfriend Bella. The setting was almost comical. The sun was streaming in through the sheer curtains, casting a warm golden glow over the room. It looked like a scene from a heartwarming family commercial, the kind where everyone is laughing and passing the potatoes. But the audio track? The audio track was a horror movie. Jason didn't even bother whispering anymore. That was the most insulting part. In the beginning, when I first started losing my hearing, he would lower his voice, glancing at me suspiciously to see if I reacted. But after 12 weeks of my stone-faced performance, he had gotten comfortable. Too comfortable. He was slicing his meat, not even looking at me, and speaking at a normal conversational volume. He said, "I looked into the nursing home on Elm Street. The state-funded one. It is grim, Belle. Smells like cabbage and depression grim. But it is cheap. If we dump her there, we can probably save about $4,000 a month on her care costs compared to keeping her here with a nurse." I chewed my roast beef slowly. I counted the chews. 1, 2, 3. I forced my face to remain absolutely slack, eyes slightly unfocused, fixed on the salt shaker in the center of the table. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the heavy mahogany table and scream, "I am right here, you ungrateful brat." But I didn't. I took a sip of water, my hand trembling just enough that I had to steady it with the other hand. Jason saw the tremble and smirked. He thought it was frailty. He didn't know it was pure, unadulterated rage. Before I tell you exactly what he said next, because it gets so much worse, I need to know who I am sharing this tea with. Pause the video right now, go down to the comments and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is. I want to see if anyone else is up late stressing about family drama like I was, or if you are watching this on your lunch break trying to escape your own reality. Drop that comment and let's get back to the dinner from hell. Bella, to her credit, looked slightly uncomfortable. She shifted in her chair, glancing at me with a look that might have been pity or maybe just awkwardness. "Jason, that sounds awful," she said, her voice a little lower than his. "She has that savings account though, right? The one you talked about. Can't we use that to get her a private room at least? She practically raised you." Jason laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound that grated on my ears. "That is the point, babe," he said, pointing his fork at me. I didn't blink. The savings are the prize. The house is the bonus. If we waste her money on a fancy facility with bingo nights and premium jello, there is nothing left for us when she kicks the bucket. And looking at her, he gestured vaguely at my face. "I don't think we are going to have to wait that long. She is deteriorating fast. The doctor said the hearing loss creates isolation, which speeds up dementia. We are doing her a favor, really. The sooner she is out of the way, the sooner we can start our life. Our life. The life funded by my 40 years of working as a paralegal. The life funded by the sacrifices I made, the vacations I didn't take, the car I drove for 15 years so I could save for a rainy day. I never married, never had kids of my own. Jason was my sister's son, and when she passed away 5 years ago, I stepped in. I paid off his student loans, which he never used because he dropped out. I let him move into the guest room, just until he got on his feet. That was 3 years ago. I watched him take a bite of the roast beef I had paid for, cooked in the oven I owned in the house that was fully paid off in my name. He chewed with his mouth open. It took every ounce of willpower I possessed not to reach across the table and slap the food right out of his mouth. But I knew I couldn't. Not yet. If I revealed that I could hear now, it would just be an argument. He would gaslight me, say he was joking, or worse, he would realize I was onto him and try to accelerate his plans legally before I could stop him. I needed more than just overheard conversations. I needed undeniable proof. I needed him to sign his own warrant. So I smiled. It was a vacant, confused smile, the kind I had been practicing in the mirror for weeks. I looked at him and said loud and flat, "The beef is a little dry, isn't it, honey?" Jason rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might detach. He looked at Bella and said, "See? Totally gone. Lights are on, nobody is home. Pass the gravy." I passed him the gravy. And as his hand brushed mine, I made a silent vow. He wanted the money. He wanted the house. He was going to get exactly what he deserved. I wasn't just losing my hearing, Jason. I was losing my patience. And you were about to find out that the quietest people are the ones you need to fear the most. So, how did I end up playing the lead role in this twisted little soap opera? It wasn't exactly part of my retirement plan. I planned on gardening, reading mystery novels, and maybe taking a pottery class. I definitely did not plan on becoming a method actor in my own living room. It all started about 3 months ago with a sinus infection from hell that migrated straight into my ears. I'm talking about the kind of congestion that feels like your head is wrapped in bubble wrap and shoved underwater. For about 2 weeks I was legitimately deaf. The world was nothing but muffled thuds and high-pitched ringing. It was disorienting and scary, and naturally I relied on Jason to be my ears. That was my first mistake. Or maybe, looking back, it was the best thing that could have happened because it showed me his true colors before it was too late. I remember the appointment with the specialist vividly. Dr. Henderson was a nice man with cold hands and a very soft voice, which didn't help my situation. Jason sat in the chair next to me, scrolling on his phone while the doctor examined my ear canals. After the exam, Dr. Henderson looked at me, then looked at Jason, realizing I was struggling to follow his lip movements. He turned to Jason and gave him the prognosis. I saw the doctor's lips moving. I caught fragments like inflammation, temporary, and steroids. But when we got back to the car and I asked Jason what the verdict was, he put on this grave, sad puppy dog face. He sighed, patted my hand, which felt patronizing even then, and wrote on a notepad he kept in the glove box. "Doc says it looks like permanent nerve damage. We have to prepare for the worst." My stomach dropped. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was family. He was the boy I used to take for ice cream when he scraped his knee. I went home and cried for 2 days, mourning the sound of rain and music. Jason was surprisingly helpful during those 2 days, bringing me tea and handling calls. But then on the 3rd morning, something miraculous happened. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, when I felt a sharp pop deep in my left ear, followed by a warm sensation. Suddenly, the silence wasn't silent anymore. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I could hear a car driving past outside. And, most importantly, I could hear Jason talking on his phone in the kitchen. I was about to jump out of bed and run downstairs, shouting with joy, "I can hear." It was just fluid. But then I heard the words coming out of his mouth. "Yeah, bro, she is totally out of it," Jason was saying, his voice clear as a bell drifting up the ventilation duct. "The doctor said it might clear up, but I told her it's permanent. She's already depressed. It is perfect. If she thinks she's invalid, she will stop checking the bank statements. I can probably siphon off a few grand for that trip to Cabo before she even notices." I froze. My hand was on the doorknob, ready to turn it, but my body went rigid. The joy of hearing returned instantly, curdled into a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. He lied to me. He took a medical update that was supposed to be hopeful and twisted it into a life sentence just so he could go to Cabo. That was the moment the old Evelyn died, and this new silent observer was born. I sat back down on the edge of the bed and made a decision. If he wanted me to be the helpless, deaf old aunt, I would be the best damn deaf aunt he had ever seen. I wouldn't say a word. I would let him dig his own grave, shovelful by shovelful. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand the history here. Jason isn't just some random moocher. He is my late sister's only child. When Sarah passed, I promised to look out for him. And I did. I didn't just look out for him. I bankrolled his entire finding himself phase. I'm a retired paralegal. I didn't make millions, but I was smart. I invested early, I bought my house in a neighborhood that gentrified beautifully, and I lived below my means. My nest egg is substantial. Represents 40 years of dealing with arrogant lawyers and mountains of paperwork. It is my freedom. Jason has always known I was comfortable, but he never knew exactly how comfortable until he started snooping through my desk drawers while I was napping. He has always felt entitled to it. He dropped out of college because the professors didn't get his vision. He started a t-shirt company that failed because he spent the startup capital on a launch party instead of inventory. He got into crypto right before the crash. And every time he fell, Aunt Evie was there with a check and a warm meal. I thought I was being supportive. I thought I was helping him get traction. But sitting on that bed, listening to him plan a vacation with my money while I was terrified about losing one of my senses, I realized I hadn't been helping him. I had been enabling a monster. He didn't see me as a person anymore. He saw me as an obstacle between him and an easy life. He saw my savings account as his inheritance that was just taking too long to pay out. I laid back down, pulled the covers up to my chin, and waited for him to come upstairs with my breakfast. When he walked in, I stared blankly at his lips, pointing to my ear and shaking my head. He smiled that fake, sympathetic smile, the same one he used at the dinner table with the roast beef, and wrote on the notepad, "Made you eggs. Eat up." I ate the eggs. They were cold. But the fire in my belly was burning hotter than ever. I decided right then that I wasn't just going to kick him out. That was too easy. He needed to learn that you don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand knows how to navigate the legal system better than you know how to navigate a fast food menu. I was going to let this play out. I was going to let him think he had won. And while he was busy measuring my house for curtains, I was going to be measuring him for a lawsuit. Things escalated quickly after the roast beef incident. Jason seemed to take my lack of reaction at dinner as a green light to speed up his timeline. He brought Bella around more often, and honestly, having her there was the hardest part of maintaining my cover. Jason was just cruel and greedy, but Bella treated me like a piece of furniture that clashed with the decor. A few days after that dinner, I was sitting in my favorite armchair in the living room, knitting. Yes, knitting. It is a cliché, I know, but it keeps my hands busy and gives me a great excuse to look down and avoid eye contact. Plus, nobody suspects the knitting lady is listening to your conversation about real estate fraud. Jason and Bella were on the sofa, maybe 6 feet away. They had a laptop open between them and were browsing Zillow. But they weren't looking for a new apartment for themselves. Oh no. They were looking at comparables for my house. "This one down the street sold for $850, Jason said, whistling low. "And it doesn't even have the sunroom like Aunt Evie's. We could easily list this place for $900,000 if we modernize the kitchen first." "900? Bella squealed. I could hear the greed dripping from her voice. "Babe, that is insane. Imagine what we could do with that. We could finally move to LA. I could get my studio." "Exactly," Jason replied. "But we have to get her out first. The nursing home paperwork is on the counter. I just need to get her to sign the power of attorney. I'm telling her it is for her medical insurance renewals. She won't read it. She trusts me." I missed a stitch. My heart gave a painful thud. She trusts me. The audacity was breathtaking. I kept my eyes glued to the yellow yarn, counting stitches like my life depended on it. Knit 1, purl 2. Don't stab him with the needle. Knit 1, purl 2. Bella laughed, a high tinkling sound. "Is she going to be okay in that state home though? You said it smelled like cabbage." "Who cares?" Jason dismissed her concern with a wave of his hand. "She won't know the difference. She is in her own little world anyway. Look at her." I felt their eyes on me. I slowly lifted my head, offering a vague, confused smile. I pointed to my knitting and gave a little thumbs up like a toddler showing off a drawing. "See," Jason said, not even lowering his voice. "Totally checked out. It is actually kind of sad. She used to be so sharp. Now she is just space. Wasted space." "Well," Bella said, turning back to the laptop, "if we knock down that wall between the kitchen and the dining room, it would open up the space for the open house. Can we do that while she is still here?" "Maybe," Jason mused. "But the dust might mess with her delicate condition. Better to ship her off next week than bring in the contractors." I already got a quote for the demo. They were planning renovations. They were planning to knock down walls in the house I bought with my first big bonus. They were discussing the destruction of my sanctuary while I sat 6 feet away, knitting a scarf for a winter I might be spending in a state-run facility if they had their way. It wasn't just the house, though. It was the little things. Later that afternoon, I went to the kitchen to get some water. Bella was there, making herself a smoothie with my expensive protein powder. She didn't move when I walked in. She didn't acknowledge me. She just kept blending, the noise deafening, then leaned against the counter, blocking the fridge. "Excuse me," I said, my voice intentionally raspy and soft. She didn't move. She just stared at her phone. I tapped her shoulder gently. She jumped, then rolled her eyes dramatically. She moved an inch to the left, barely enough for me to open the door. As I reached for the pitcher, she muttered, "God, she is so annoying. It is like living with a ghost that takes up space." I paused. My hand hovered over the water pitcher. I wanted to turn around and say, "Actually, ghosts don't pay the electric bill you're running up with that blender, sweetheart." But I swallowed the retort. Tasted like bile. Instead, I shuffled away, clutching my water glass. I went back to my room, locked the door, and pulled out my secret weapon. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a high-fidelity digital voice recorder I had ordered online 2 days after my hearing returned. I had been keeping it in my pocket, recording snippets here and there, but tonight was different. Tonight they were getting specific. They were talking about dates, ship her off next week, amounts, 900,000, and methods, power of attorney. I sat at my desk and replayed the audio from the living room. Jason's voice was crystal clear. "I'm telling her it is for her medical insurance renewals. She won't read it." This was it. This was the smoking gun. He was planning fraud. He was planning to trick me into signing away my legal rights under false pretenses. This wasn't just being a bad nephew anymore. This was criminal. I looked at the calendar. The family gathering, a belated birthday party for my cousin's daughter, was in 3 days. Everyone would be there. Jason's mom, my other sister, my brother, all the cousins. Jason wanted to finalize everything before then so he could announce his hard decision to put me in a home as a done deal. He thought he was racing against the clock of my deteriorating health. Little did he know he was racing against me. And I was already at the finish line waiting for him to catch up. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my lawyer, Mr. Finch. I attached the audio files. I typed, "Prepare the papers, the new will, the eviction notice, and bring the projector. We are going to have a movie night." I hit send. Downstairs, I heard Jason laughing at the TV. "Enjoy it while you can, kid. The mute button is about to be unpressed." The next morning, the air in the house was thick enough to choke on. Jason was vibrating with nervous energy. I could hear him pacing in the kitchen while I pretended to sleep in. He was rehearsing. Not a play, not a speech for a job interview, but the lies he was about to feed me. "Just sign here, Aunt Evie. It is just for the insurance. Simple. Quick." I heard him muttering to himself, testing different tones. "No, too pushy. Try softer. Aunt Evie, I just want to make sure you're covered." I lay there, staring at the cracks in the ceiling plaster, feeling a cold resolve settle over me. This was the trap. Today was the day he would try to get me to sign the power of attorney. If I signed that document for real, he would have control over everything. My bank accounts, my medical decisions, my estate. He could legally shove me into the cheapest facility he could find and sell my house before the ink was dry. I got up, dressed in my most frail old lady cardigan, and shuffled downstairs. Jason was waiting at the table with a stack of papers and a pen. He jumped up when he saw me, a manic grin plastered on his face. "Morning, Aunt Evie," he shouted, way too loud, pantomiming drinking coffee. He guided me to the chair like I was made of glass. On the table sat the document. He had clipped the front page back so only the signature line was visible. Classic conman move. Underneath it, I saw the words "Durable Power of Attorney" peeking out. He had covered the header with a sticky note that said, "Sign here," smiley face with a smiley face. He tapped the paper aggressively. "Insurance," he yelled, making a square shape with his hands. "For, doctor." He pointed to his ear, then to the paper. "Need signature. To keep helping you." I looked at him. Really looked at him. He had dark circles under his eyes. Greed is exhausting work, apparently. I reached into my pocket and turned on the recorder. "What is this?" I asked, keeping my voice shaky. "Insurance," he repeated, his smile faltering slightly. "Just renewal. Paperwork. Boring." He waved his hand dismissively. "Sign so we can pay bills." I reached for my reading glasses. Jason's hand shot out and intercepted them. No, he said, shaking his head. "Small print. Don't worry. I read it. It's good. Trust me. Trust me." There it was again. The phrase that should be illegal for him to use. I hesitated. I needed to make this look convincing. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. I brought the tip down to the paper, hovering just millimeters above the line. I saw Jason hold his breath. His eyes went wide, fixated on the pen tip like a cat watching a laser pointer. Then I dropped the pen. "Oh," I gasped, clutching my hand. "Arthritis. It hurts today." Jason let out a frustrated groan that he didn't even try to hide. Okay, he said, picking up the pen and jamming it back into my hand. "Just try. Please. Important. Is Bella here?" I asked suddenly. Jason blinked, confused by the pivot. "What? Oh, why?" "I thought I heard her," I mumbled. "Talking about walls." Jason froze. For a second I thought I'd blown it. He looked at me with genuine suspicion. "Walls?" he asked slowly. "The walls," I said, looking around the room vacantly. "They feel closer. My hearing, it makes the room feel small." He exhaled, visibly relieved. "Oh, yeah, sure. Sign the paper, Aunt Evie. Then we can go for a walk. Outside. Big space." I took the pen again. This time I didn't sign my name. I scribbled a jagged, illegible loop that looked vaguely like an followed by a seismograph reading during an earthquake. It wasn't my legal signature. Not even close. If he tried to use this at the bank, they'd laugh him out of the building. But to him, in his desperation, it looked like victory. "Perfect." He snatched the paper away before I could mess it up further. "Good job, Aunt Evie. You're safe now." He practically skipped into the kitchen. I heard him call Bella immediately. She signed it. "We are golden. Call the contractor. Tell him he can start demo on Monday." "Yeah, I'll drop her off at the facility Sunday night after the party. I'll tell the family it was an emergency placement or something." I sat at the table listening to him seal his fate. He thought he had the keys to the kingdom. He didn't realize I had just handed him a dud grenade. Later that afternoon, Mr. Finch, my lawyer, dropped by to drop off some old files I had requested. Jason was out celebrating with Bella, so the timing was perfect. Mr. Finch is a sharp man, 70 years old with eyes that miss nothing. We sat in the kitchen and I played him the recordings. He listened in silence, his expression hardening with every sentence. When the recording of Jason calling the nursing home grim and cheap played, Mr. Finch took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "This is substantial, Evelyn," he said quietly. "The fraud attempt with the power of attorney alone is actionable. But the intent to neglect? The financial exploitation? We have enough for a restraining order, immediate eviction, and potentially criminal charges if you want to pursue them." "I don't just want him out, Arthur," I said, my voice steady and strong, dropping the act completely. "I want him exposed. He is going to try to play the victim to the family. He will spin this. I need them to hear what I heard." Mr. Finch nodded. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a fresh red folder. "The new will is drafted as you requested. And the revocation of any previous power of attorney documents is ready for your real signature." I signed the documents with a flourish, my hand steady as a rock. "One more thing," I said. "Did you bring the connection cable for the projector?" Mr. Finch smiled, a rare, shark-like grin. "I did. Sunday is going to be quite the event. Are you sure you're ready for the fallout?" "Arthur," I said, looking at the empty spot where Jason had sat that morning. "I have been listening to my own funeral arrangements for 3 months. I'm not just ready. I am looking forward to it." Sunday arrived with blue skies and the smell of barbecue charcoal, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in my gut. The family gathering was in full swing in my backyard, the very backyard Jason had planned to bulldoze for a pool, according to a recording from Tuesday. My cousins were laughing, my sister Susan was cutting the birthday cake for her granddaughter, and Jason was working the room like a politician on the campaign trail. He was wearing a somber expression, touching people on the shoulder, whispering about how hard things had been lately. I sat in my usual spot on the patio, wearing my oversized sunglasses, watching him weave his web. Bella was by his side, looking bored and scrolling on her phone, probably picking out furniture for the LA studio she was never going to get. Mr. Finch arrived right on time, carrying his briefcase and a portable speaker. He wasn't a party regular, so his presence raised a few eyebrows. Jason looked confused for a split second, but then his ego took over. He probably thought I had forgotten to tell him I invited my lawyer. He waved at Mr. Finch dismissively and then tapped a spoon against his glass. "Everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" Jason shouted, stepping up onto the deck. The chatter died down. He put a hand on my shoulder, squeezing it tight. I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. As you know, Aunt Evie has been struggling health-wise. Her hearing is gone and her confusion is worsening. He looked down at me with fake tears shimmering in his eyes. It breaks my heart, but after consulting with doctors, I've made the tough decision to move her into a full-time care facility tonight. It is for her own safety. I will be taking over the estate to ensure her care is managed properly. A murmur of sympathy went through the crowd. Susan looked ready to cry. "Oh, Evie," she whispered. Jason squeezed my shoulder again. "So, let's make this a celebration of her time in this home, before she moves on to her new chapter." He looked down at me, expecting the usual vacant stare. I reached up, removed his hand from my shoulder and stood up. I didn't wobble. I didn't shake. I stood up straight, took off my sunglasses and looked him dead in the eye. "Actually, Jason," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent yard. "I think the only thing we need to celebrate is the fact that I can hear every single lying word coming out of your mouth." The silence that followed was heavy. It was absolute. You could hear a bird chirping 3 houses away. Jason's face went pale, then red. He laughed nervously. "Aunt Evie? You can hear? That is a miracle. Why didn't you?" "Save it," I cut him off. "Mr. Finch, play the tape." Mr. Finch, cool as a cucumber, hit a button on the speaker he had set up on the patio table. Jason's voice boomed out, loud and distorted but unmistakable. "If we dump her there, we can probably save about $4,000 a month. Smells like cabbage and depression. The sooner she is out of the way, the sooner we can start our life." Gasps erupted from the family. Susan covered her mouth with her hand. Mr. Finch let it play. The crowd heard Bella calling me a waste of space. They heard Jason plotting to trick me into signing the power of attorney. They heard the laughter about how easy it was to fool me. Jason looked like a trapped animal. He looked at Bella, who was already backing away toward the gate. He looked at his mother, who was staring at him with a mix of horror and disgust. "It is taken out of context." Jason stammered, his voice cracking. "It is a prank. We were writing a script. For a movie." "A script?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is that why you tried to make me sign a power of attorney disguised as insurance paperwork yesterday? Is that why you have an appointment with a demolition crew for Monday morning?" I turned to the crowd. Jason didn't just want to help me. He wanted to erase me. He thought I was deaf, so he planned to steal my life savings, dump me in a state facility and renovate my house with my money. I turned back to Jason. "But here is the best part. That paper you made me sign? It was fake. But the one I signed with Mr. Finch this morning? That one is very real." Mr. Finch stepped forward, opening a red folder. "As of this morning, Evelyn has revoked all previous estate plans. Jason, you are no longer the beneficiary of the house, the savings, or even the old toaster. Furthermore, you are hereby served with an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises." "You can't do that." Jason screamed, his mask completely gone now. "I have rights. I've lived here for 3 years. And you've paid 0 rent, Mr. Finch countered calmly. "We have the receipts. Or rather, the lack of them." "But the money," Jason shouted, pointing at me. "Who gets it? You have no one else. You are going to give it to charity just to spite me." I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in months. Actually, yes. And no. Mr. Finch cleared his throat and read from the new document. "The bulk of the estate is now placed in a trust. The primary beneficiary is the National Association of the Deaf, to help those who actually struggle with the disability you mocked. And as for the house..." I looked at my sister, Susan, who was still weeping silently. She had always rented, always struggled, but always loved me. "The house goes to my sister Susan. Effective immediately upon my passing. But until then, I plan on spending a significant chunk of that nest egg on a world cruise. First class." Jason looked at his mother. Susan looked at Jason, her eyes hardening. "Get out," she whispered. Then louder. "Get out of her house, Jason. Now." Bella had already vanished. Jason stood there alone, stripped of his entitlement, his inheritance, and his dignity. He looked small. He mumbled something obscene, turned around and stormed out of the gate, kicking a plastic chair on his way out. The party eventually resumed, though the mood was definitely different. There were a lot of hugs. A lot of apologies from people who hadn't realized how isolated I had been. But mostly there was relief. I sat back down in my chair, picked up a slice of cake and took a bite. It tasted sweet. Tasted like victory. I could hear the music playing. I could hear the wind in the trees. And for the first time in 3 months, I didn't have to pretend not to hear the sound of my own life getting better. So that is my story. I played deaf to see who was truly blind to basic human decency. If you have someone in your life who only sticks around when they think there is a payout coming, do yourself a favor. Listen closely. Sometimes the quietest moments reveal the loudest truths.